Our nation mired in toxic partisanship, left versus right, us versus them. While we pay to keep our politicians fighting, how do we, the people, rise up and solve the great challenges of our time? We do it by embracing freedom and liberty. There may be no such thing as a free lunch, but this hour is as close as it gets. Welcome to A Free Solution.
All right, welcome to A Free Solution. I'm Kevin Wilson today. Thank you so much for joining us here on this wonderful Thursday night, joined by Tim the Freedombarian O'Connor here as well.
I'm here, man. I'm thinking, I'm still looking for the right new name to change it to. Like, I'm thinking about changing it from the Freedom Variant to Tim Anti-Authoritarian. Like, I'm just done with authoritarianism, compassionate authoritarianism, benevolent authoritarianism, virtue signaling authoritarianism. I'm done with it, man. I'm done.
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't quite roll off the tongue like the Freedom Variant, but we're going to find it. Yeah, leave your suggestions in the comments, folks.
That's what I'm looking for. I was actually begging for attention.
Do Tim's thinking for him.
Yeah, I'm begging for attention, man. Should we do memes of fire, or should we talk about, like, there's a lot of exciting shit going on in the world right now? But
yeah, no, there's a bunch of stuff going on. So, like, title is talking about, like, can the U.S. do more to avoid war in Europe? We're going to talk about the Nord Stream pipeline stuff, the kind of more aggressive threats of war, and kind of this discussion about whether or not, like, the U.S. has, like, some role to play in facilitating peace, whether or not is the aggressor in this situation, which I don't agree with, like, the Russian-Ukraine war. But we'll talk about all that. But first, I want to just do, like, a quick update because I did my show yesterday on the Jones Act, which I know was kind of a mess from an online perspective. So the podcast is going to be up in just a little bit, because you guys online probably didn't hear, like, we had the Libertarian U.S. Senate candidate from Hawaii call into the show. Her name's Fina, and that's one of her top issues is ending the Jones Act. And so it was fun to get a call, from Hawaii on my live radio show in Rochester, and to talk about the Jones Act and the ways that ends up hurting people. Again, it's hurting. They finally did waive the Jones Act for Puerto Rico, because there's been all these ships that don't meet the Jones Act's requirement because they're not U.S. flag ships, U.S. built ships, and U.S. staff ships, so they couldn't deliver stuff to Puerto Rico from American ports, even though there's all these folks who wanted to help them out. They finally waived it.
It's illegal.
Yeah, it's illegal. Yeah, you're not allowed to. They could not. They had all these, like, diesel generators and diesel from Texas that they want to unload to help the people of Puerto Rico after they got hit by, I think it was Hurricane Fiona or whatever it was. And this happens almost every year, right? Where, like, Puerto Rico gets hit by a hurricane, it could use some help from the American mainland, but you can't. You can only do it if it's American ships, because even in a disaster situation, it's not automatically waived. You can't have foreign ships delivering goods between two American ports.
Yeah, I've had these extensive conversations with Colin Grabo from the Cato Institute, right? Like, this guy, one of his sole purposes in life is to get people aware of just how bad the Jones Act is, okay? And so his latest thing is to point out that the U.S. military, civilian rescue type stuff, buys their ships from other countries, and because they're a government entity, they get to flag them and use them. And they're a third the cost of what an American-built ship costs, and what an American-built ship costs to run, and what an American, the flags, like the taxes and stuff that an American-built ship pays. Yeah. So he's just like, what do you guys realize just how much corruption this brings into the system? Like, when you're shipping something from California to Alaska, you have to use an American-owned, American-flagged, American-made ship. And so Alaska's pays me like $9 for an egg, right? Like, we could ship them eggs a lot cheaper in mass cargo containers if we were to do away with the Jones Act. It's a freedom-based issue, man.
It is 100% again, and in places that like it's harder because like again in the lower 48, it's less of an issue, right? You know, there's these other ways of getting goods between like American cities and states. You know, you got freight trains, you got trucks, all this other stuff. But even that, like even like transporting something between like say New York and Miami, right? You know, sometimes it might be more efficient to send a cargo ship that way too. There are other methods, but like it makes everything more expensive for all of us to have this ridiculous protectionist system, and it's one of those things that should be an easy slam dunk to get rid of this because it would immediately help people in Hawaii and Alaska and Puerto Rico just by keeping the cost of goods down, but especially so when there's a natural disaster where we have to wait for the government to be like, okay, I guess we'll get rid of this ridiculous and unhelpful law for a minute though, but just temporarily, guys.
It's like they know it's a horrible law. They know it costs millions and millions of dollars on our products and our goods. And th- so, in an emergency, they suspend the Jones Act.
Yeah.
It's one of the most corrupt pieces of legislation that survives decade after decade after decade. And it costs Americans millions of dollars. It's just amazing that we can't fix that.
Yeah, been there for 100 years, and yeah, it's just that there's no other than like no offense to us and the folks listening, but weird online libertarians, like no one cares about this, right? Like
Mhm.
that's the only problem. It's you know,
That's
it's libertarians that like Cato and us and a handful of other people like, oh, this law's so bad. And everyone's like, what's the Jones out? Oh no, like I don't even
what's
care.
the Jones Act? And why isn't it great that we protect American ships and
Yeah, right.
American-owned shipping companies? And it's like, because it costs you money, you knucklehead, and it costs you a lot of money, and you don't even realize. And it costs your neighbors in Alaska a lot of money, and it interferes with rescue efforts to Puerto Rico. Okay, and like guys, all that stuff that happened in the last hurricane in Puerto Rico and all the corruption that went on there. The Jones Act facilitates that corruption because of the expenses involved. And then when they open the floodgates, it's hard to keep track of everything.
Yeah.
So, like, we need to do better. That's it.
Yeah, there's
I
so
hate
many
the
ways
Jones
again.
Act.
Like even if it's one, I said this in yesterday's show. Even if it's one of those things that like it doesn't immediately benefit your constituents, the right thing to do is to just get rid of it.
I think that there's a case that could be made that it fills the campaign coffers of people in Washington State and Alaska to maintain the Jones Act.
Maybe.
Trump was going to get rid of the Jones Act by executive order, right?
Oh, he was going to do a lot of things.
Well, hold on. Right. And then there was this private closed door meeting. This is a story that Colin Graybo tells. So it's like I'm telling it secondhand and I don't remember all the details. Okay.
Mhm.
But like, let's take the inference of what happened. There was this closed door meeting between the senators of the state of Washington and the senators from the state of Alaska. And they're like, hey, like the American shipping companies, they give us a lot of money and they probably want to make a couple donations in your direction. I mean, I'm just saying, guys, I think that I think that that's how politics works. And I don't think I'm wrong.
Yeah, sometimes it does work that way. Again, it's what like you can look at this with the Jones Act. You can also see this with things like sugar subsidies too, right? Like
Sure.
For American sugar growers in Florida, like the sugar subsidies really matter. Like it is super important to them. So they're gonna go all out to protect those subsidies.
Yeah.
But for us, it's like it's so small, like it doesn't even register on the radar of things that like even matter. There's so many other injustices out there, so many other things that we could tackle. We're like when you bring up like, yeah, we need to end sugar subsidies, people are like, what? Who cares? Like, isn't there bigger problems to deal with?
Kevin, I got a riddle for you.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. What's in all of the world, the most profitable form of farming?
What's that?
Credit farming from the
Credit
government.
farming. There you go.
I mean, everybody from Elon Musk to the sugar growers in Florida participate in credit farming. All the way to your local governments, they also farm for credits from the state. Like that's
so
the most
they talk
profitable
about
form
half
of farming.
their budgets like grants and federal dollars, and some of it's mandated, so they have to figure out ways to work around it. School systems, that's how it is. Like
School system is a great credit farmer. It absolutely is. Like that's what they do, man.
The school boards that like because they put themselves in this position of like being reliant on state and federal funds in many cases, like, and that's how they get it. It's not a mandate so much as like, hey, if you don't do this thing that we want you to do, we're gonna take away your money, and now like you don't see how you can keep the lights on without
Yes.
having that money. So you're like, well, I guess we comply. Otherwise, like, how are we gonna, fulfill our educational mandate?
So that's the problem with centralizing everything. Okay, the directions come from the centralized power lords to signal virtue, and we get to this point where education in New York State has become. A lot of people feel like the education in New York State is no longer about education; that it's about a political agenda. And look, my kids' teachers and my teacher friends. I'm I'm talking about a perception that you human beings don't want to participate in, but that residents of your community seem to see. And I do think that there's a reality that social programs have become too big of a part of schooling. Whereas, like, even to the point where sports suffers and like drama and music classes suffer because we have some social programs that go on that eat up resources that we can't concentrate on stuff that kids might actually really want to do. I don't know. Am I wrong about that, Kevin? You're going to homeschool, I think, aren't you?
Probably, yeah. And I see we have some other advocates out there, Brian. So
Brian,
homeschooling is the way to go.
he's more than just an advocate for homeschooling. Like he's legitimately this guy. I don't know if you guys caught any of my show on Monday with Brian, okay? But like Brian's doing some things to expose corruption. He's very proactive, and I do believe that he's participating in opening up a schooling location that supports homeschooling and offers kids those opportunities for sports and a real education. And I
Yeah.
think that we need more of that, but I also think that that's not an answer for everybody in the state, and that a lot
No,
of
I
people in
mean,
the state want a fixed public education system that returns to serving the educational needs of their children, not the social and emotional needs, the educational needs of their children. But I don't
good
know.
luck with that.
I know, I know. I sound like a lunatic. I feel like a
Yeah, that's
lunatic
I
saying
like.
it.
I like legit. I don't have any issue with like schools like helping with social and emotional learning. Like like that isn't something
I
that
get
bothers
it.
me.
Yeah, it
Like
takes time.
okay, so like I used to work in a childcare center, right? And like one of the things we talk about is like, okay, you're getting these kids in UPK, and some of them have like literally like never interacted with children before. Like they
I
just
know.
like they're in families that where they're just kind of left home, watch TV. And so social emotional learning is teaching them, hey, if you're in a group of children, don't bite the other children.
That's
Like
big. That's
yeah,
big.
that's part of it, right? It's like don't bite your friends.
Th-
Like people like
There,
half joke, like, hey, if like they can get through UPK and they learn a lesson like don't bite your friends, like we're
yeah,
doing all right.
that's there is value, right, in behavior modification and saying, look, when you're here, this is how you behave. That facilitates A,
Yeah.
B, C, D, E, F, G. Okay, that facilitates teaching. Okay,
Yeah.
so I get that, but I got one other point to make out. Like I've struggled with shared custody with my kids and stuff like that, and I will tell you that at no point that I can remember. Maybe if we caught them when they were 4 or 5, but we could have talked them into wanting to be homeschooled. Okay, like once they got invested, and there's no way my ex-wives would have said, "Yeah, okay, I'll stay home and homeschool our kid," or "Hey, why don't you stay home and homeschool our kid?" Because that would have put a financial burden on our families and our social structure that just would not have worked. I
Yeah.
want a fix to, and I like Larry's solution, right? The grant money follows the kids. Schools have to answer to their constituents, to their customers, no longer answering to a centralized overlord
Yeah. No, that'd
planning.
make things a lot better. And then especially if you can get like micro schooling options too, charter
Sure.
options, the public school options. Even if you ended up subsidizing the public school options, it would be better than, the status quo that we
Sure.
have now, right? Like that's a compromise, like I think is like reasonable enough where like, okay, fine. Like you want to give 10K per student to the public schools and 5K to everyone, whatever. Like that still
Whatever it
puts us
is.
better than where we
40
are now.
$40,000 per student, New York State spent.
Yeah.
Our ranking has never been higher than 17. Number one in expenditures and 17. You know who ranks
Yeah.
18? Kentucky. So we mock Kentucky, right? And here we are, comparable results. They spend $9,000, $10,000 per student. We spend
Yeah.
$40,000.
Yeah, I said $10,000, like that's a big amount of money, but like, yeah, in New York State, like it's so, particularly in Rochester too, like it's so high, it's so much money per student, and then every year during budget season we have to, yes, it's not enough this year. It was $35,000, $40,000 per student, but it's not enough. And I'm like, what you talk like? How much do you possibly need to educate a student compared to, like that's like living on a college campus for a year prices right there, and you can't accomplish that. Come on.
I can't believe if money was the answer, spending money was the answer, right? Obviously, we could see where there would be economic pressures. Maybe we'd be in the top 10, all right, because we have some densely populated urban areas
Oh my
that
God.
haven't sorted everything out yet. That we have some rural settings where there are really a lot of poor people that have been generationally
Yeah.
poor, like that schooling has never been emphasized for them. But at $40,000 per student, we should be answering those needs, and
Yeah.
we are not. We are
So
not.
by the way, I went to look up the Rochester spending per student because I was like, I was probably exaggerating about 40K. Like I should give the real number, not
You
just
should.
a wild number. You want guess what the real number is?
$43,250.
It's 42 600.
I
42,588.
mean,
Yeah,
I
like
wish
I felt like I was exaggerating. I did a whole
I
show of this. I'm like, no, that's way too high. That's a crazy number. Why would we possibly spend that much money? No, that's what it
I
is.
wish that I was making it up, right? Because these are things that my brain obsesses over, right? So I see a tweet or I see it something on Facebook, and then I go and check the article. Like, guys, I don't just buy your bullshit that you hand me, okay? Like, I go and check the article and I see if it's legit, and like, it's the number is $39,500 on average per kid in New York State. Like,
Yep, it is.
that's an amazingly horrible
Yeah. Which is,
deal.
again, you can go to a private school for a fraction of that and get a much better education. Just
Sure, and
wild.
guys,
Like very, very good private schools.
yeah. Look, my kids' teachers are legit, man. They
Yeah.
focus on learning. They're nice people. They try not to get caught up in politics. I know some superintendents are the same way. I know that we recently had a superintendent in Milford that was very political.
Yeah.
There was a problem with that guy. He was an authoritarian, and he said things like, and look, to me, it was obvious the guy wasn't committed to our community, right? So he says things like, "Hey, I can't find a house in this town, so you guys should fix your zoning." So the town imposes a moratorium on doing baseball rentals, right? Nothing has freaking changed except for this guy is gone now, and houses that were on the brink of being able to get fixed up for vacation rentals. And guys, your neighbors making money doesn't suck. Okay, don't hate them for that. All right, they want to take a property, turn it into something special, and rent it out. Let them do it, man. Because now here it is. All the houses that were falling down before are still falling down. I see one guy been working on a house. It's gone. It failed. His cars are in the thing. The grass has grown up. He lost his zest for it. Something didn't work out. So it's like, guys, freedom is an answer. It's a solution, and it allows for this entrepreneurial spirit to continue. And we've blown it, man. New York is
Yeah.
blowing that.
Yeah. No, 100%.
Sorry,
And
I jump from subject to subject too.
no, we're all over the place. That's what happens, just because I know like the original plan here, we started with the Jones Act and then ended up here talking about education. Which I know we talk about a lot. It's fine, but it's tough. Again, I know like to me, like there's kind of no way to decouple fully education from politics, right? Like there's
Sure.
certain parts of like, if you learn about the Constitution, you learn about liberty, you learn about it in the way that we want, like that is also in a way political. Like it's advocating a small L liberal point of view on the Constitution and the founding of our country. Like great. I want that, but and then other folks choose a different tack on that. They see that as inherently political, and they're not wrong. And so
Right.
the solution to me is like, okay, schools as they should exist should teach kids to learn how to learn. Everyone's going to have their own thing, and then you, as a parent or caregiver or guardian, have the responsibility to teach kids to see through that and to like discuss and think critically and find evidence and look at this stuff and say like, hey, sometimes your teachers are right, sometimes they're not right. Look for the evidence, look for like what the actual solutions are, because teachers are people just like you and everyone else.
Yeah. I saw a great meme, Kevin. You know, I'm a memester. I just love them. So like, it's like a kid like says to the school, "Hey, you know, I want to learn how to balance a checkbook," and the school says, "The Earth is made of magma," and it's like, I don't know. It was kind of hilarious.
Mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
the
yeah. I
millennial
mean, it's
joke.
just like,
I just
and
need
then
to know how to do my taxes.
like, the Earth is round. Like,
Yeah.
and we proved it. Have you though?
Oh no, we're not going down that road.
We could.
Yeah, no, like again, my whole take on that stuff though is like, yeah, like it'd be cool if, you know, schools tell you how to do that. I learned that stuff from like both my parents and like scouting though. Like I took
Sure.
personal finance merit badges. I think it was one of the ones that was required to get Eagle, right? So
Right.
took that,
You're
you
an
know,
Eagle
it's some,
Scout?
yeah,
Wow, that's great.
Eagle Scout.
Congratulations. When I was young, not that different from now, I did not have the ability to focus on like things like that. I could play sports. I love sports. I could focus in that. I could focus on those little tiny problems that like no one else could solve. I could focus on things like that. But like I don't know. The focus has always been like, do I want to participate in this for the next 12 years so I get an Eagle badge? And then the answer was always invariably no.
Yeah. That helps. I had friends and like the camping part, you know. Sorry, it's something to do with that.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's it's a combination though. Like, yeah, there's a lot of stuff to fix about the education system. We expect too much out of it though, and it's just there has to be like other community and parent support for like these life skills that kids need.
Yeah.
Um, and
It
that's
is.
why like education ends up doing a lot because like there's a lot of parents, families, communities that just aren't teaching kids this stuff, and they're going out into adulthood and they're a mess. And so it's like, well, the education folks feel like, oh, we got to do something maybe.
We should do something, right? We should do something. I do think that school is not a panacea for the societal ills. I don't think that the teachers union in and of itself answers any real issues about education. Okay. Like they encourage a dystopian view of what education is supposed to be as an extension of your family and things like that. And
Yeah.
then they get to say, hey, we're not getting enough money to be a family and teach these kids how to do stuff. And it's like, all right, well, how about you just focus on teaching them how to do stuff? That could be okay.
Great.
And again, you know, like I think about this and I think about the way I say things. And when I talk about teachers, I know my kids' teachers. I knew my kids' teachers. They were wonderful people. They did a great job. There, so somehow we've got to separate the wheat from the chaff on that because I don't
Oh,
want to
sure.
be knocking human beings in a system that's troubled,
Yep.
expensive, and not meeting the needs of our kids.
There's a lot of great teachers out there. Some of whom are libertarian too, and they struggle to thrive and to like again teach kids to learn how to learn in a system that constrains a lot of what they're able to do too, right? So
Common
yeah,
Core, right? Common
yeah.
Core says your kid has to be able to reproduce a very confusing way to do a math problem, and that's
some
what we have
kids
to
do
teach.
better that way. Like I like it's funny. There's some Common Core like math stuff where I'm like, oh, actually, that's how I do it in my head. Like, you know, I didn't follow what the teacher taught me I do. Like I kind of thought of my own way to do it to make sense. And they told me like way back when before Common Core, like, no, you can't do that. You got to show your work this way. And, yeah, but it still
Yeah,
makes sense to follow this method.
I get it. I was very quick processor when it came to mathematics, and so anytime I look at anything other than the way I did it in my own head, I reject it automatically, right? Like
Yeah.
so,
To me, I'm
whatever.
like, yeah, like whatever method works, right? Like again, I like the Common Core methods, like some of that stuff like worked for me as a kid, even though like I did it was before Common Core is a thing. And I was told like the existing methods, like, no, you got to do it this way.
Yeah,
And then you know, now it's like it's flipped, like, okay, no, you got to do it this Common Core way. And if you do it these other ways, like then you're wrong. I'm like, nah, that's not really right either. Like whatever method that is like going to whatever process, whatever algorithm is going to get the kid to the accurate result, like let the kid do that.
whatever a kid brain slides through to the answer. Let's
Yeah.
let them do
As
that.
long as it's a method that's going to produce accurate results, then okay, you know, it's
What could be more important than that? Accurate results at the end of the day. And I do
yeah.
think some of the focus of Common Core is on the busy work piece of it. And you're right. You know, back when we had the same problem back 30 years ago. So
Yeah.
it's the same thing.
So again,
Sort of.
and that's why like the education system, when you're like, hey, let's fix it. And I get why parents want to fix it, but to me, it's like, no, like we need to have like more diversity in the education system and more options for kids to be able to like pick the paths that are most effective for like facilitating their learning, right?
Yeah, I think, and let's give a little shout out to Shelley for being out there. Common Core has convinced children that they're stupid. There is, I would say, there's an emotional component to it, and I did find some of the things, especially early on calculations of where a kid could get to 10 times 2 is 20 really fast, like simple calculations in your brain where memorization can play a good role. Um, they're like, no, it can't be that simple. You have to do it the harder way because that'll make it better down the road. And I'm not convinced by that. And so
No. Well, it's kind of right though. Like again, just memorizing 10 times 2 is 20. Like doesn't really matter. Even though I did like the speed drills in like
me too.
third,
Yeah,
fourth, fifth
flashcards and
grades,
stuff. Yeah.
and I was good at them. Like I won the prizes. It was great. But like knowing like how that actually functions, right? Like understanding how multiplications function is better in the long run than just like memorizing times tables, right?
Okay, but right, I get, you're absolutely correct, right? But there still is an intuitive way to do math that makes sense, right? Like -1 times 9, whatever, you get to the 10 times 90, you get there, right? The numbers come out if your brain wraps around that stuff. Now, Common Core says, and again, I think we had the same problems when I was younger, so I don't know. I just feel like school has lost its emotional way, and I think that there felt like a piece of Common Core was to like, hey, you can't help your kid with homework anymore, because it's like this is the process. You know how to get the answers. Don't talk to your kid about it. And I felt like there was a little bit of that, and I think I think it's accurate.
Maybe. I don't know. I guess, again, I didn't experience Common Core. Maybe like when my son is in, if we end up sending him to public school and is going through like this stuff, like I'll be like, yeah, I don't understand what the heck's going on, and this doesn't actually make. I don't know. Maybe I'll feel differently about it, but
Yeah.
but again,
So
to me, it's just that if it's accurate, it gets them to understand the core concepts of that, and it's not just fluffy nonsense that doesn't actually teach them to process math or understand how to read or whatever. Again, the point is to learn how to learn. And then once kids can know just the basic concepts of math and the basic concepts of like reading and writing, like they can go on their own path a lot more.
I agree. So look, Kevin, the world, Kevin, the world, guys, and everybody out there in the audience right now, I want to tell you the world is filled with good news today. Absolutely wonderful news.
What's next?
Two amazing things have happened this week. Two amazing things, at least two, maybe more. All right. Number one, the House Democrats finished drafting a bill. Guys, you guys are going to love the Democrats for this. All right. And Kevin, I expect like fully emotional investment on this. The Democrats have introduced legislation that would ban senior government officials from owning and trading stocks. I think this is long past overdue. I see it as just flying through the House and the Senate. What do you think, buddy?
I'm more skeptical that it's going to fly through the House and Senate, especially with master trader Nancy Pelosi.
Dan Crensshaw's not bad at it either, just so everyone knows. He's really, really a good trader.
Yeah, exactly. Just somehow super good at predicting what companies' stocks are about to rise.
I don't know.
Especially the ones that are on committees for it. Somehow,
I don't know
weirdly. Yeah, crazy. No,
yeah,
like
this legislation has never before been crafted in the history of the United States. What do you think about that statement?
Yeah, I mean, there have been proposals for this stuff. What the weird part is that like, so the type of activity that members of Congress are doing here would be illegal if you or I did it. Like, it is, to be clear, like it's very obviously like a form of insider trading. Like we would not be allowed to do that. If we had inside knowledge, like we were on the board or inside a company and we had made massive stock decisions based on like knowing we were going to get a big government contract or we were about to lose something, we would go to jail. Like
We
that's
would. Oh, it's so amusing.
but members of Congress are allowed to do that. So literally all they would have, they don't even have to ban members of Congress from like trading stocks, they just have to do one of two things. Like, one, either enforce the laws against Congress on insider trading. Like, if you have this special exclusive knowledge of this stuff going on, you cannot profit off of that using your public position. And then the other thing they could do is they can still own stocks. It's just got to be in a trust, which is what I would assume that this bill does, right? It doesn't
It
prevent them from
doesn't.
owning
It doesn't do that. It doesn't. They can
that. Well,
still.
then it's that it'd be a bad bill then, because like usually like the most of proposals that come out with this, it doesn't say you cannot own stocks. It's you must have your stocks in a blind trust. So you can invest like in the same way you might invest in a 401k and it goes towards like a managed fund. That's the
Yeah.
same thing. Like you can invest money, but someone else that you're not allowed to communicate to would be managing that portfolio.
Yeah, they can still, under this bill, okay, they can still purchase diversified ETFs, diversified mutual funds, U.S. Treasury bills or bonds, state or municipal government bills or bonds, and others. Um, this is based on Nancy Pelosi's, in particular, her success with um, and she's a victim here, guys. I think you guys need to start understanding.
Victim.
She's just a victim of her husband's astute stock trading. His success with Nvidia, though, was just absolutely incredible.
Yeah,
Just
weird that suddenly he invested a whole bunch of money in this chip company as a big chip subsidy bill is about to drop publicly.
so weird.
Just before that news happens and the stock starts to rise. He bought a whole bunch crazy. Just super good timing.
Just coincidence, Kevin. Just coincidence. Look, and so here's the thing, right? And again, I think you and I have emphasized this in the past, but I think we should always emphasize it every time. Like a lot of the things that they do are absolutely unquestionably corrupt, right? They trade on stock knowledge. They trade on they shuffle money to one country and then it shuffles back to their kid coincidentally. All of this bullshit is legal, right? Like, or at least non-prosecutable, but it's still corrupt. And so that's where we're at, man.
Yeah. No, that's I'm usually fairly optimistic about most stuff, but yeah, no, this is it's brazen corruption. It's something that us average folks are not allowed to do.
I love making
and
progress with you, buddy. I love it. I love it.
no, is it there's real bad stuff out there, right? It's again,
Sure.
my whole take on like most pieces of legislation, like the ones that sometimes the ones that are like the worst sound like they're accomplishing something like really nice and wonderful and kumbaya, right? Like, hey, we're just doing this to help people, right? So it's not and they are convinced, the folks who do this stuff are convinced that they are doing the right thing, right? The folks who are doing the insider trading are not convinced they're doing the right thing. I don't think, right? Like, I don't like. Maybe they're that delusional. Maybe they're that psychopathic. It could be with the stock trading stuff. Like, but it is weird how members of Congress seem to grow their wealth so much faster than like anyone else in public.
Uncommon Whales, it's a Twitter account. You guys should check it out. If you're on Twitter, they do a really nice job of showing just how amazingly successful your elected representatives are at trading stocks.
Yeah.
I mean, I do have more good news, and I feel like you're going to piss all over that too. Like I have amazing news, guys. It came down to the wire. Okay, I mean, these poor guys that work so hard in Congress have been unable to craft a budget for at least 12 years. Okay, but miracles never cease. They once again managed this week to pass a continuing resolution to spend more money. It was
another continuing resolution.
A continuing resolution to spend money. And guys, there's amazing things in the bill. $12 billion more dollars to the Ukraine with no, right directly to Zelensky's bank account, bro. Like there's no oversight. I remember, do you remember when Rand Paul said, hey, you know what we should do is keep an eye on how that money's spent in the Ukraine, and everybody in the whole world shit all over him. It was like, but don't worry, guys.
So
there it is.
we'll get back to Ukraine thing in a second, but yeah, part of that too is like the subject of my Monday show, where it's like, hey, here's this thing that will like just put a time limit on environmental reviews for projects, so that we can do things like build new solar panel, facilities, or build new windmills, and that got killed. So no, it's still just
Yeah,
a
no,
total
they
mess.
took
Like
that
just a total moderate, like simple reform. Just be like, hey, this can't go on indefinitely. There has to be a cutoff point where you put in all your objections and we,
was
come to a resolution, yes or no.
is
Nope.
that the that rebel Joe Manchin from
That was
his
Manchin's.
poison pill? He poisoned that bill, Kevin. I don't know
Oh
where
my
you
goodness.
get your information from. That codicil to that bill was deliberately trying to make that bill not pass.
Yeah, well,
These
that
guys,
was so it got in the Inflation Reduction Act, and then it got demolished because it never got enforced yet in the continuing resolution. So that's what ended up happening
I
with
don't know
that.
what you're talking about, man. You sound like you think these guys are up to no good. I
Yeah. I think Elizabeth Warren is, she's doing the virtue signaling here again, and again, I am very convinced that she thinks she's doing the right thing. My goodness, we are protecting the environment by keeping this bureaucratic nonsense in place, right? Because we need all this extensive environmental review so the big oil companies don't abuse us. She is, and again, that's the truly dangerous thing, is someone who's convinced that they are doing the right thing in this situation, even though what in fact she is doing is preventing the transition to a greener economy and a decarbonized economy by making it harder for nuclear plants, windmills, solar fields, and other green technologies
Kevin,
to actually emerge.
Yeah, I got to ask you a question. All right. And this question was posed to me this week because I do occasionally advocate for greener energy and localized nuclear production. I think that are you a CIA shill? That's the
CIA shill.
question. I just thought I'd put it out there.
Yeah, no, they're gonna pay me any one of these days.
Are you denying that you're a CIA shill for advocating for nuclear energy? That's a centralized power grid, bro, that supports the production of nuclear weaponry.
I don't know. I definitely want an SMR in my backyard. So, I don't want it centralized. I guess I will accept if it is centralized, but like I want one in my backyard, so I can then sell the power to my neighbors without the government interfering with me.
Oh my god, that would be epic, right? That would be epic. That would be
I don't know why a bank would turn down a loan for that, so it seems like I should just be allowed to do it.
I do think that as we're watching problems like the Nord Stream pipeline getting blown up by not Russia, okay?
Not Russia.
Not Russia, because they
You
own
think?
it, bro. They own it. They would
So
not blow that up. Um,
Since when do we expect competence or logic out of the Russian government?
bro, I just want to point out that they granted citizenship to Edward Snowden, and we couldn't accomplish a grant of clemency to that guy because what he did was legitimately blow the whistle on the NSA and the Patriot Act. Like that's what he legitimately did, and even a guy that I like, Rand Paul, shit all over him when he did it. Like I'm just saying, like Russia's got.
Well, it's a different situation, though. Again, Russia's doing that not because they support whistleblowers, not because they support exposing they're doing it because it is going to make America look bad. Like that's it, right? Again, totally separate issue from what Russia's doing. And I know you threw out the thing about like the Ukrainian funding too. We should talk about that because that was the intent of what the discussion was today. And instead, we talked about like all sorts of other random stuff.
We're awesome like that.
Yeah,
you're welcome. You're welcome, America.
So let's talk about like the Nord Stream pipeline thing, and here's the thing, like there a bunch of like, well let's let me kind of give like what I suspect is like the best argument for maybe the U.S. or the CIA was involved in that, right?
Okay, let's hear it.
Yeah, so I heard this and on TikTok earlier, but but I know my number one source for news, but actually it was kind of a good argument for like, hey, maybe the U.S. is involved here, right? That right now there is the biggest like negotiating tactic that Russia has to get places like Germany to stop supporting the Ukrainian side is natural gas, right?
Right.
Because there's so much natural gas that's used to support Germany and a bunch of other places in Europe too, a bunch of places that are currently supporting the Ukrainian side of the conflict, in the basically the whole EU bloc doing that. Having the natural gas flow and threatening to cut it off is the biggest, stick that Russia has to say, hey, if you don't, get serious about stopping this and brokering a peace deal and allowing us to seize this Ukrainian land, we'll cut off your gas, and then you're really in trouble, right? Blowing up the pipeline takes that away. So, hold on,
we had a guy in our government threaten to make sure that Nord Stream...
No, that's that's nonsense. Like, I've seen people do that. Like, it's nonsense. So, like, it's not necessarily that the U.S. is involved in that, though. Like, again, the accusation there. We'll get to what you can give more context on what you said there, but the accusation is that the U.S. is involved, but it could be that the Ukrainians are involved with it, right? Because the Ukrainians have a lot of incentive to, again, take away that bargaining chip from Russia. And blowing up the pipeline would do that. It would be kind of a logical move if they got away with it, right?
Yeah. And look, I was playing chess today on chess.com, and I was having a conversation with somebody in Europe, and they said that they heard that U.S. Navy ships were in the area. That's all I want to add as context.
There's also Russian Navy ships in the area. So,
check your source, bro. That was CNN.
Yeah, that's true. I did see CNN report that the Russian ships are in the area, but also Reuters did, and
all right. So what? Honestly, let me be serious for a minute. Like, what concerns me about these things is that legitimately, right? There's going to be a lot of questions about who the actual saboteur is. There's going to be a lot of finger pointing. And what's going to happen is whatever emotional narrative wins the day. I just want to be everybody to settle in as anti-war, right? Like that's where I want to point that if we there wasn't a war going on that we can't necessarily control. I get that, but that's the real issue. Is war is the real issue. Fighting is the real issue, and these are things as human beings that I want us to move away from. So my emotional plea here is that we just don't accept war as an answer. And yes, we have to defend ourselves, but
right.
So how do we fix this? The Nord Stream pipelines weren't actually really moving that much gas anyway. They were just in test mode phase.
Yeah, well, the second one was like the first one was, actually moving gas, and that's why people think it was sabotage, not just an accident, because they both got damaged on the same day. Right.
True.
True. Again, and I said, the Europeans are saying the Russian did it. The Russians are saying the Americans did it. To me, like
the one that Ukrainians did it.
Yeah, honestly, that kind of makes the most sense. It might have been any one of those powers. It might.
Greta Thunberg. I saw some. Maybe Greta Thunberg did it.
It could have been her. Like they could. Yeah. We need a greener economy now.
She's willing to take those steps to
whatever it takes.
Yeah, we need them to say it's possible.
But
at this point, it's possible. But there's a skepticism over the news, right? Yeah. And so when we get to where there's actual real news, and someone says, "No, it's definitely Russia. We've got this evidence," people are still going to be like, "I don't know."
Yeah, I said my only bit. My bit of skepticism in this is that, like, it probably doesn't make that much sense for Russia to do it. Again, source of income and leverage to facilitate a peace deal, or at least facilitate the EU's no longer backing the Ukrainians, right?
So you would buy right now that Ukrainian forces the most likely.
I believe it, right? Like, and again, we'll see what evidence, if any, ever pops up for this. But like, they have the most to gain by this happening,
and it could honestly just be like a terrorist act, right?
It could just be some not a state actor, just like some random jerk, doing it,
or
like it is,
some other terroristic, that a parasitic terroristic organization that has money could say, "Hey, World War III benefits us," even though no one knows about us right now. Like that, those
World War III
Ukraine,
benefits no one. It's just bad
um,
news.
well, no, like it does benefit the notion of chaos and terrorism, right? Like
Not if we all die. That's if it ends with nukes flying, like no one wins. Everyone loses that conflict. Like every single person ever at all
I do
loses
think
that
that there's
conflict.
terrorists in the world that don't see it that way. Like that
Maybe
they would
if
just
you're
say,
one of the you know, humans are really a scourge on this earth, and we should get rid of them.
right. They're there. They're out
Facilitating
there.
World War III is a way to do that. You
Well,
know?
there's religious extremists, there's communist extremists. I mean, they exist, right? So it could be it's not necessarily a government sponsored entity, but an entity that likes that, right? That thinks like that.
David's like, we know, dude. They want us all dead. Wake up. I don't know about that. I mean, again, it depends on who they is. Like, there are probably some wackos out there who are like that. But yeah. I mean,
I had you so close to the conspiracy theorist wormhole tonight. Now you're pushing back. I get it though. I get it. I understand.
yeah. So I mean, here's the thing. Like, in terms of like because I had asked the question, can the U.S. do more to prevent this, right?
Right.
And so
That is a good
there's a couple things. Like, so one is like, okay, how much does the U.S. government continue to support like the Ukrainian side in this? Because they're providing the HIMARS missiles, they're providing a whole bunch of ammunition, equipment, money, like those billions of dollars, right? They're getting
Yeah.
spent. Unlike what happened in Afghanistan, it isn't all just going over in straight cash. Like a lot of it's going into like
Plain
buy a
words.
weapon system and send it over there. And those weapon systems are very clearly being deployed and used to great effectiveness, which the Russians then know. And they're like, hey, you guys aren't a non-combatant in this thing. Effectively, if you are buying and producing the weapons for the other side of this conflict, you are a combatant in this conflict.
Well, what do you think about that position, Kevin?
About the U.S. doing that?
No, about Russia's position, not saying you are a combatant if you are doing this. What do you think about that?
It's not totally unreasonable from their
Okay.
perspective. Again, knowing
I
that
agree
like
with
Russia is the aggressor in this war. They could
Sure.
not be getting themselves killed by just stop invading another country.
I
Right?
also agree.
So
Like I
all
think
they got to
John
do
said
is they
that.
just got to stop with their war. Period.
Yep. No, you're right on point.
Right now they're looking at possibly facing uprisings in their own country too, because they're trying to conscript 300,000 people who don't want to go, and now millions of people are fleeing their country and or burning down recruitment centers because they don't want to go into the meat grinder. Can't blame them.
I can't blame them. I want no kids going to the meat grinder, bro. Like
Yeah.
I want none of it. I
and-
want Russia out of the Ukraine. I want Ukraine has some laws that encourage this corruption, but I don't think the answer is having Russia blow them up. Like that's bullshit.
No.
Okay. Like the violence that we've managed to avoid for the last 40 years and keep it on a small scale. Now I feel like we're sitting on the brink of it again. And that
this is a big war. Now you got, because Russia's taken that position, not totally unreasonably, that the US is a participant in this war, as is Europe.
Right.
The Polish are all but like fully backing the Ukrainians too, and several countries in Europe too, providing weapons, providing staging areas, all money, all this stuff. They're saying like, hey, if this doesn't go our way, they're feeling backed into a corner. What happens when you have a psycho dictator backed into a corner who's desperate, who has nuclear weapons? We don't know.
We don't know, other than they have the potential to use those nuclear weapons.
And they're threatening to do that, right? And the US government is like, hey, if you do that, like, you're going to have devastating consequences. And I believe the U.S. government when they say that. So that now, like, here's like, if we had Gary Johnson as president, right? Like, what does a libertarian do in that situation, right? Where, okay, the U.S. government has previously already committed to helping this side in this war. The Russians see you as a belligerent. They are threatening to use nuclear weapons, and then they do use a nuclear weapon in Ukraine. What do you, as the U.S. government, do if that actually happens?
That's a great question. What does a libertarian do? Do you want my answer?
Go ahead.
All right. And I think that let's keep this as an intellectual discussion, right? Because that I don't know if it happens, when it happens, what my actual answer will be. But there is an argument to be made that we step out of it, we let Russia take them over, we stop funding this war because Ukraine would automatically have to capitulate to Russian demands. That will automatically result in less death, less destruction, and less chaos.
Yeah.
And I want those things.
Yeah.
I don't know if
It's-
it's right.
Well,
I
I don't know.
I don't know that it's morally correct. I'm just saying, is it possible that that's the libertarian solution?
It is possible, right? And that's again something there's a great podcast by and I always promote this guy. I've never met him. Andrew Heaton has like a podcast on nuclear
He's
war,
great,
right?
man. He's hilarious.
Yeah, he's great, but he has a very dark show on like what happens like in the event of a nuclear attack, and there's things like apparently the Prime Minister of the UK writes a handwritten letter to the commanders of their nuclear submarines that have like the ballistic missiles, right? It's like and it tells them the instructions like what happens if the UK gets annihilated with a nuclear weapon. Like, what are the instructions? Do you fire everything you got at the Russians? Do you join the American, remainder fleet? Do you, just go into hiding and try to help as many people as you can? And,
Right.
they handwrite these letters, they put them in a safe, and then, do not open them unless like the absolute worst thing happens. And then when the next prime minister comes in, they destroy that letter, it never gets read, and then they insert a new one.
Right.
And that's what it is. And these live in the submarines. And so again, there's folks who have to make these decisions. Again, I listen to that and I think about like what would be best, right? Like before something like that happens, right? You have to say like there are going to be serious. That's how mutually assured destruction works. There's going to be
It's such
serious
bullshit. I hate it.
consequences if
Yeah.
an attack happens. You have to at least make the believable threat that, hey, if you use a nuclear bomb, it's going to kill you too. Like no one wins in this scenario. It's going to kill you too. You don't get to do that as a pass. But there's, once that actually happens, it's a different scenario, right? Like, do you do that even if it means possibly the death of civilization itself, possibly the extinction of humanity?
That's the thing, and I'll tell you that at the very least, if we use nuclear weapons on a mass scale, the average life expectancy of the human being is going to be cut by 60%. Okay, like we may survive, but our existence will be drastically reduced.
It's bad news. Go listen to the episode I talked about. But it's bad news, and again, a huge chunk of the earth is going to be uninhabitable, mostly because of like nuclear winter type of stuff.
Right.
But
It's horrible.
bad news.
It's depressing. It's a reality that we're facing, right?
Yeah, and again, it's not something we've had to like think about as much in the last like 30 years. Since before I was born, like I've never really been like paying attention to stuff in I wasn't there to pay attention before the Soviet Union fell. I was an infant.
I've got to be honest, Kevin. It was when we were young. I'm substantially older than you, right? I think it's about 20 years age difference. Okay, when we were young, there was a real, clear, and present terror about a nuclear war. Somehow we put that away for a few decades. Somehow we got away from conversations about mutually assured destruction, and here we are, right back there. We solved our political leadership, our political elites, our ruling class never solved any of those problems. They never, ever, ever got to where we should be. And that's a world where we respect each other. That's a world where we trade with each other. And that's where a world where we realize that there's human beings behind these governmental structures that don't want to die, that just want to raise their kids. And
Yep.
and if we get there, and if two crazy loons like me and you can say it enough, and people hear us and we say it, I want that to be the solution, right? That we say there's human beings behind this bullshit. Let's just chill out, Like I don't know. And look, I'll even be honest, right? There was a time where I was tempted to join the military, right? And like go solve these world's problems. And I never got to that being the real answer. And
Yeah.
it's not the real answer. It's not. I want violence to be behind us. I want to take us to a new plane of understanding. And I'm not sure I'm the guy that can do it, but I want to advocate for that's where we're going.
Yeah. No, for real, man. It's that's the goal, right? And hopefully the goal of anyone who's not, just completely out of their gourd, right? Again, I understand the reality of like nuclear deterrence as a thing, but also the idea of doing that is it's not wise. Again, you don't want that many people to die. You don't want anyone to die, right? Like it's just so beyond what uh is moral, what is logical, and what
Yeah,
is
yeah.
essential for the survival of the species.
And that's actually something we should all say. The survival of the species is important. Like, and I think that at some point, somewhere, somehow, we've gotten I don't know, too emotional, too selfish. Something's happened in the last few years that I don't. I try to put words to it, and I always and I'm good with words. I feel like I'm decent with words, and I feel like I always come up short. And so when we're talking about war, that's an area where I can never ever come up with the best words for it. Like it's terrifying. It's sad. I you know I
Yeah,
was glad that somehow war missed my generation. Like this major conflagration where 20% of the adult males risk their lives and millions of them die all over the world. We missed that, and I was glad, and I want
yeah.
to stay glad.
So
Like
despite all the wars that go on, there's a bunch of bad stuff that goes on. It's been one of the most peaceful periods in human history right now. There's still a bunch of messed up stuff going on,
sure,
but
sure,
the last several decades have been some of the most peaceful periods in human history, despite terrible
despite
wars
our,
that have still happened.
right, and despite our petty bickering over
Yeah,
almost irrelevant shit when we're faced with nuclear destruction, right? Like a lot of this looks irrelevant.
yeah.
We can complain about schools, right? But in the face of nuclear destruction, complaining about schools is useless. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, I don't know.
No, no. Let's talk about Lizzo and the flute. Let's talk about that.
Oh my god, yeah. Well, let's argue over that, right?
Yeah,
Like,
right.
let's see that. But I do think, guys, because we love you, we need to go down a little bit less serious route for the last few minutes that we're gonna be hanging out, right? Like,
Yeah. No, we're gonna switch subjects. I mean, again, like just the point is that we have to hope, because there's no other option, that the Biden administration can be prudent in both, you know, threatening realistic consequences and also threading the needle of doing their part to facilitate a legitimate diplomatic solution to a war of aggression
I know,
that
but
we are entangled in, and then also that the people of Russia, like, and all the advisors around Putin and whoever's making decisions over there, also pull back from the brink as well. Like it's not it's not just an American thing. It's a you know it's kind of an everyone thing.
all right, so look, let's deal with. I guess maybe we should deal with this comment, right? Bullshit. More goddamn slavery in the world now than any time in history. I don't know
Nah,
that that's accurate. I think that there is still slavery in the world. Like he's absolutely right there. And
yeah,
and the
still,
African continent, there's all sorts of things that are not reported in mainstream media going on. Like,
yeah,
so-
terrible stuff that happens. There is a lot less of it now than before, though. There's a lot less of it now than before. It's just it used to be widespread. It used to be common. It used to not even really be considered immoral by most people.
correct.
And
It was real. It was just like part of the way we did things.
yeah, and so like now, like there's morals against it, there's laws against it, there's international organizations that are trying to fight against it, right? Like, yeah, that stuff still happens, but now it's the exception rather than the socially acceptable rule.
Right, right. So look, I appreciated, then this is our friend Shelley, right? I appreciated that Trump didn't insert us into new wars. I also feel that this is on some level an accurate statement, okay? And that doesn't mean, like that doesn't mean that I'm a Trump fan, guys. Like, but he did actively try to seek to do a couple things that I thought were important, and that was to get NATO to contribute more money and the same percentage of their economy that we contribute.
Yeah, they
Um,
should.
and
Europe should be responsible for its own defense. This should be a European thing.
I thank you, Kevin. I thought maybe
Yeah.
we were going to be like, nah. I knew we
No.
would agree on
Yeah. No, like I generally agree. Like I didn't think like NATO causes conflict. You know,
that.
I don't agree with that. But Europe should be responsible for its own defense. Like they have a lot more interest in doing that than we do. and not to mention the money saving part of it, but
Right. Absolutely. We are slave, but get paid wages, so we don't think we are. I do think that it feels like we're moving to a very feudalistic society. That if we don't comply with everything the government says, and I want to tell you, Kevin, that I think this was different slightly when I was younger, a younger man. That there was a respect for people that owned property in the community. And also, I think people are really starting to feel this devaluation of the currency, right? Like, so the numbers in their paycheck don't mean shit anymore. All right, like their numbers look great, but they can't. Coffee's $14 a tin now. You know what I mean? Like there's
getting
there's
expensive.
this real
Inflation.
thing where buying power and standard of living is sliding just a little bit because we're facing rampant inflation, and your government is going to take your property, and they're going to come fine you if you collect rainwater sometimes. I mean, there's this
Yeah.
real thing that's going on that I think
So
we were better than that a few years ago.
no, I mean I don't fully agree, but and I'll just say this about like Patty's comment. And I know I hear this from like leftists occasionally, but I think that to compare like wages to slavery like really truly undermines the actual horrific nature of slavery as it existed in America. Like
Oh, yeah,
it's
that's
really
fair.
bad. It was really
Yeah, no,
violent.
that's
You
fair.
had no options. Like your family could be sold. Like there are bad things about our economy. You know, it is not the same thing as slavery.
Right.
And I know there are different types of slavery too that existed in different ways, but like specifically comparisons to American slavery when you have the ability to like leave your job, the closest you could get to that, like in the semi-wage situation, is like the coal mines in like West Virginia and in some of those towns that literally
was
you couldn't
feudalism.
leave under threat of violence.
Yeah.
That's closer to that. Now, you know, there's threat of, you know, not being paid, but you can find other things. Like there's literally you could not leave or you would be arrested. That is that's a lot closer to slavery. And again,
Yeah, and detained and thrown in
yeah.
prison for being in debt. And look, guys, look, here's the thing. I've had a lot of conversations with Dave, and Dave is angry, and that solves nothing. Okay. And Dave, come back. We'll have more conversations. We'll work it out. Dave is a conspiracy realist. He's right about a lot of things. But he's angry now, and he's angry at Kevin and I because we didn't agree with certain things he said. And I don't see solutions there, right? Like I don't. Dave and I agree on 70%, 60% of the way government should be, our rights, our individual liberties. There's no need for us to agree on 100% of everything to get to a better solution, right? Like that's the thing. And it's okay that he's mad. I get it. Like I get mad all the time, you know. So
listen, I was just trying to think like what where are the actionable things that like we can do like now in our community around us, like wherever we're able to, right? And I know we talked about like nuclear war and that stuff like is terrifying in part because it's so far out of our control. There may be, you know, psychopaths who have the ability to kill us all, and we don't have all that much influence over that. So, you know, I just try to say like for most of the time, you know, that conversation aside, you know, like do what you can to help people where you can. And, you know, regardless of whether or not like certain like conspiracies about stuff are true or not true, like don't let that overwhelm you to the point of not doing good things wherever you're able to.
Yeah, and look, so Patty fires back, right? That's fair, Kevin. It's not slavery, but it does feel like an increasing level of serfdom where we are serving things through force that we don't necessarily want to participate in. And we can go back to our conversation earlier about how we spend $40,000 per student in New York State. And guys, that's not going in teachers' pockets, right? That's coming out of your property taxes. That's coming out of imaginary money that the state borrows. And it's like, how do we fix that? And guys, we talked about Nancy Pelosi a lot today, and I don't think we fix it by worrying too much about what Nancy Pelosi does. I think that even though what she does, some of it's evil and embarrassing and all of that stuff, and Dan Crenshaw, or your the color you paint your boots doesn't matter to me. Okay, you're pulling bullshit kind of stuff. So yeah, how do we fight back, man? And like, I'm fighting back by having conversations with Kevin, and I'm fighting back by having conversations with Patty, and I'm fighting back by supporting my friend Larry Sharp, and I'm fighting back by trying to get two guys out in Chemung County to help them have a positive impact on the races that they're running. And so, will I be successful? I don't know, but bro, I'm not gonna not try. Like, that's the reality. I'm not giving up.
Can't give up the fight before it started, right? You know, like if there's no chance of you winning if you don't try.
That's 0% chance of winning. Then you're just leaving it to everybody else, man. And so we've got to try. And so, guys, like, literally, I go out of my way. I enjoy talking to you guys, and I enjoy talking to Kevin, and I enjoy talking to Larry, and I love doing this stuff. But there's important things. We can talk to other people, and that's the trick, right? That's the part that we've got to fix. And so, you know, like the guys for right now, for me, the two of the most important races in all of New York State are two guys that are running for county executive positions in Chemung County. Those two races are the most important to me. But why? They are libertarians, right? And so what does that entail? A lot of you guys understand what that entails. And they cohabitate, they're doing the work, they're knocking on doors, right? And they're like, hey, conservatives, what do you think about, you know, not simply endorsing a Republican and perhaps allowing us to habitate your line? They're doing the work. So, you know, getting a local guy, helping a local guy get elected to the school board by just running my mouth on the internet, right? And then having this bad superintendent leave right after this guy got elected. Like, it's a path forward, guys. It's important. I'm sorry, I'm monopolizing everything, Kevin. I apologize.
No, you're fine. You're fine.
It's just those are solutions. I can feel better about that. I'm like standing against village moratoriums, against people renting out their houses to baseball world, right? Like that. Stop falling for nonsense, guys. Like, we have houses falling down all over upstate New York. Let people spend their money, invest their energy to get a return, and love them for it. Like, their kids will grow up here. Like, the school will survive. Like, those things are better than all the rest of this stuff. What do you think about that? I feel like I'm getting all sappy. I'm not even. None of that shit was funny, Kevin. None of it.
Yeah, weren't we gonna head in the funny direction next?
We were, but none of that got to be funny. I'm so sad.
That's right. No, it's good points, and we'll just get to a couple other listener comments, and then we'll get to the funny stuff, right? We'll just let's do that. You know, Patty says, you know, we've done shelters, food pantries, take household and personal, you know, cleaning supplies, walk around the laundromat, pay for someone's wash dry, so a whole bunch of different stuff that you can do. You know, find some way that you're able to help, like either on the personal level or, you know, on the systematic level, whatever it is, find some way to be helpful. This question quick from Shelley says, what was the last time we were actually at war, as in congressional approval? World War II. That was the last
World War II. That's correct.
Yeah, all those other wars, they were police actions, you know, authorization of use of military force, but not an actual war, you know, that type of stuff. And Andrew on Facebook says, you know, we need more people like Winston Churchill, who saw through people's crap, like Neville Chamberlain, plus Hitler, and plus people like Joseph Stalin, who screwed over people just like Putin. I mean, like, you know, strong leaders who you know, speak the truth even when situations are tricky and diplomatic are important, right? So that's part of it. And there's people are trying to make those comparisons right now, fairly or unfairly, about, like, you know, do you use the threat of military force against someone like Vladimir Putin because they could expand further into Europe because of that. And again, I don't totally have the right answer to that. And my inclination, though, is probably we don't need to get involved in this war, and we should probably find ways to de-escalate our involvement as much as possible. While I support you, yeah,
Right. It's not because we're pussies, right? It's not because we can't do it. It's because the violence being visited upon the people of Russia, the violence being visited upon the people of Ukraine, that if we
Yeah.
can do something to dial down that violence
yeah.
by
I
saying
said this isn't totally in the hands of the U.S. government either. Like the Russians need to stop.
correct.
And the Ukrainians, like they're in a tough position, right? They don't want to cede any territory. They may ultimately do that, but they're going to say right now we're not going to cede any territory because that's how you start out a negotiation, right? You don't say, yeah, sure, we'll give up this, that, and the other thing. No, you say we're going to keep it all, and we're going to fight to the last man, and the consequences of you not stopping your war of aggression are going to be catastrophic. All right, yeah, I get that, but also the U.S. should try to do what it can to end that, even if that means again that stinks for the people of Ukraine, but finding a way to end that and save people's lives wherever you can. I don't know, we'll see how it goes. Again, that
We're
one
like
stinks.
anti-Malthusians. That's
Yeah.
it. That philosophy that less is going to make everybody's life better. I don't buy it.
Yeah,
We're just scratching the surface of our ability to provide for the world and advanced technology. And we that I will say is something
And-
that I feel was legitimately lost, like the dreaming and the advancing technology and I blame it all on decoupling from the gold standard and taxes and deficit spending in the Fed. Like that's all real.
yeah, it is all real. Maybe I don't know if that's why we didn't why we don't dream anymore, but just to make the point, like my politics generally, more people are generally better because that's more minds who can contribute, who can build, who can invent, who can do cool, fun, awesome, creative things. The people
Yeah.
who scare me left and right are the ones who are like, there are too many people, we should get rid of them. Whoa, okay, yeah, no, I don't
Easy now,
I don't want
Adrian, like,
nothing to do with you. That tells me a lot about your politics. I don't need to know anything else. You're talking about getting rid of people. Nope.
you're the authoritarian of the worst kind.
Yeah, that's always gonna go in a bad direction.
All right, so look, I got one for you. I'm going to test your knowledge right now.
All right. Yeah.
There's a record that's recently been set. In August, there was all right. Kathy Hochul kind of said something along the lines of, "Hey, if you don't like what we're doing, go to Florida." As a consequence, a new record was set, Kevin, and what it was that New Yorkers switching their New York State driver's license and turning it in for a Florida driver's license. A new record, Kevin. Should we be proud of that? I mean, is it real
not
news or is
proud?
it fake
No.
news?
Yeah, it's real news.
I know.
I've been talking with a bunch of my Florida friends. I again glad that they're all okay right now, getting hit by a hurricane. My brother's down in Florida. He's on the other coast right now. But he lives in Florida. He moved from New York to Florida. So they're getting flooding where he's at. And, but yeah, no, I know quite a few New Yorkers who are down there right now. They just got sick of a whole bunch of stuff. Been having a rough time at the moment, but generally think they've made the right choice.
Yeah, almost 6,000 people, Kevin,
Yeah.
switched their New York State driver's license to a Florida's driver's license in, I believe it was August. 5,838 people. Year to date, almost 42,000 New Yorkers have made the ID switch after moving to the Sunshine State, the outlet added. And guys, if it's almost 6,000 people that went to Florida, I know people that are going to Tennessee. I know people that have gone to Kentucky, the Carolinas. So so I'm just saying there's an issue in New York State that is plainly not being addressed.
Yeah.
I think it's an issue of freedom. I think it's an issue of loving your neighbor. I think it's an issue of overtaxation, and I think it's an issue of opportunity.
Yeah. Yeah. If
And
you can't get through the regulatory burden to be able to start a business, or businesses can't expand because of that unless they get their subsidies.
I know hey, if you don't give me a pilot program, I'm not going to build a house. It's like, well, don't worry, you can't really build a house anyway. It's like
Yeah.
we have too many fucking rules. I think, look, there was look, this is a funny story. There was a kid that was very actively campaigning and working for the local government, right? And like he's a big fan of recycling, and he was very excited when we enacted all these new recycling laws, and he was like out on Facebook encouraging people to turn in their landlord if they didn't provide the proper like recycling facilities. Guys, guess what that kid is doing now? He fucking moved to North Carolina. He's gone. Like this kid is getting paid to advocate for authoritarian policies, and he's like, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna move to North Carolina. See you guys later. It's just like, holy shit, man! Like, come on. Do you not see? Like, you left for better opportunity, and some of your
unfortunately,
policies.
that's what happens to a lot of people. I've been advocating for these policies for a while, but now it's terrible here. I'm gonna go move down to another state and do the same thing. So
Oh my God.
yeah, it's sometimes like people of like Texas, Florida, New Hampshire get a little grumpy with the folks moving. Like, I'm glad we have like internal open borders. Like, it's a great thing for you to be able to immigrate like wherever you want. But I know some of the folks in other states like, hey, could you not do the same thing that ruined your state like down here? Just stop.
And look, I don't blame those guys. They're like, hey, you're coming here because we have something you don't have. Shut your pie hole and don't start making laws. Just don't start. You cannot show up to a city council. This should have a rule. Like, don't show up to a city council meeting and spew your politics for like a decade. Okay, like that's a rule. You move to Florida. Here's a requirement. You can be a citizen every place else. Stay out of the city council meetings and town council and county council. Just stay out of them.
Yeah,
it's a little bit authoritarian, but I think it'd be worth it.
Yeah, well, no, as a rule, but like as like a general kind of set of cultural practices, I get it. Even though I say that as someone who's like not from Rochester originally and ran for office in this area,
right?
Lived here. I will have lived here 10 years in December.
Yeah, that's what. And now you can start going to.
And now I can show up to city council meetings. All right,
yeah,
cool. Now I can do that. It's just waiting. All
Um,
right, hold on. Let me get to my fake news item.
Oh, please,
and then
yeah.
maybe we'll just do like the one and call it a night. But this is a Pennsylvania Senate race. Dr. Oz saying allegedly saying fun stuff. We'll see if this is real or
Oh
not.
man, that
So
race is hilarious to me. There's no winners in that race, and certainly
no,
not the people of
everyone loses
Pennsylvania.
except for the memers. The memers
Yeah,
win in this
the memes
race.
are gonna win. Yeah, but the
Memers,
people of Pennsylvania are
Wagners.
losing.
Yeah, so those are the only folks who win. So did Dr. Oz say that John Fetterman wearing hoodies was like kicking authority in the balls? Real news or fake news?
All right. I'm going with that's literally real news. And I'm going to say this. I'm going to go one step further. Dr. Oz thought that was a huge dunk. Like, he's like, bam, see? I got you now, sucker.
He did in fact say that it is real, and he did think it was a huge dunk. He's just like, yeah, it's just a costume, and that every time he puts on that hoodie, it's like, he's saying I'm kicking authority in the balls, and then everyone immediately like it was like that sounds awesome. Actually, I mean, like this guy, but that sounds
great. For
Fetterman.
I mean, he's too busy pissing on his going to the bathroom on his campaign staff.
Fake
just
news.
Kidding. That's fake news.
but no, this one's real. It's like what. And so it says, I'll quote Dr. Oz. He says, he's kicking authority in the balls. He's saying, I'm the man. I'll show these guys who's boss.
Oh, my God.
Saying he's sending a deeper message with his choice of attire. I don't know, man. You just gave that guy a great new, like, campaign slogan. Like,
honestly, right?
Like, why? Yeah, like, I'm mad that the libertarians didn't get to use it first. Like, this.
I'm with you. That is awesome.
Vote Kevin. Kick authority in the balls.
And wear a hoodie to all your campaign stuff.
That's right.
God Dang, that would be awesome. Yeah, I'm anti-authoritarian. My kids love me. My daughter who's going to school up in Albany texts me. She had a guest to her class, right? And this is just a real story, but it's just kind of funny, you know. She's like, this judge is sitting here telling us that let me see if I can find the quote real quick. It's because
Yeah.
guys, you're gonna appreciate this. Us semi anti-authoritarians are gonna appreciate this, right? She texts me and says, dude, just said we have to respect the law even when it doesn't respect us. And she said, Dad, I think you'd find that funny. And I'm like, oh my God. Oh my God. I found it hilarious, but not like ha ha funny. It's like ha ha, authoritarians are everywhere and we're so screwed. Like
Yeah.
you know, but that's a special guest to my kids'
What
class,
a
a judge saying, and I'm like, screw him, nullification
yeah.
is real, deal with it.
So I wouldn't say anything in high school, but now like I'm like, man, if someone said that nonsense to me in college, I would have just been a complete jerk about it.
I'm sure that she was passively resistant to
Yeah.
that message. Like, you know, like she was texting me as he said it. So that's a little
Yeah,
bit
right.
of passive resistance. Um, but I had a meme kind of like blow up on my page, and actually I loved it. And I'm gonna try to share it with everybody. Um, you know, like normally I talk a lot of trash and I have a lot of fun on my page and I try to have fun. But this meme right here, guys, got the most likes of any of my political memes um ever on my personal page. Like I had one meme on my political page that got, I don't know, something like 22,000 likes and 18,000 shares. It was just lucky, you know what I mean? It was just like this iceberg thing, and everybody bought into it, and they share. I must have been the first one to post it, and it just made the rounds. So, but on
Yeah.
my personal page, let me see
So
here.
it's always funny how that happens. Even like just like grab the screenshot from somewhere and post it, and for whatever reason, my page was the one that it got shared from everywhere.
Right, right. It's just great when that happens. It's fun. It's fun when you want to be popular and think you're having an impact on everything. So,
Yeah.
Kevin, this post right here, on my page got like almost 125 likes or something like that. It was amazing. Most people don't actually care about the issues or the fact that we're continuously losing more freedoms. They care that the team they identify with is winning. They care more about seeing those on the other team upset than the fact that we are all effing losing. I thought that was pretty poignant.
Yeah.
It
I
gave me
mean,
hope.
it's all tribal virtue signaling in some cases. A lot of it, right? Like again,
Sure.
I think that there are some things like people actually care about, but like a lot of it's just like there's no consistency in principles in like the big two parties. It's I want the other team to lose. Even if
Yeah.
it means we all lose, I want the other team to lose.
And I want the guy that I elected to punish them. I want
Yeah.
that guy to put his boot on their neck. That's unfortunately where we've gotten to.
Yeah. There's a lot of it's a lot of the direction that partisanship has gone. It more aggressively. It's always kind of been there, but more aggressively recently is worrying again. Like instead of finding ways to work together to like make sure we win. That was my criticism of like pulling out the environmental like review stuff in the recent continuing resolution thing. Like, okay, you could virtue signal to your base, or you could think of something that's it's not exactly like a win. It's a good, reasonable compromise to get the thing that you want, but also the thing you want sometimes may make someone else a profit. And that should be okay. But instead,
I
it's like, nope, we got a virtue signal to our base and we're all going to lose. People
uh,
can't build stuff, including new green energy projects. We're all going to lose, so the corporations can't win.
I was actually a
Great.
little sad. Like I very much enjoy those 12 and a half hours that the federal government has been shut down in the last 10 years. I'm like, all right, I'm going to go out there. It's going to be total freaking chaos. It's my time to shine, everybody. It's my time to shine. And then like the street lights are still working and the sheriff's like still ready to give me a ticket for speeding. And I'm like, the government was supposed to be gone.
No, they don't actually go away. They just like stop you from entering parks. Like that's what a government shutdown.
Only federal parks, and
Yeah.
only like if you're on national honor flight, like going to see your,
Yeah.
the tomb of the unknown soldier. Like you
Such
can't
a
do that
ridiculous
when the
thing.
federal government shuts down. It's awful.
All right. All right. So I think we're gonna call it a night. I did have one more item, but like, it can wait.
All right, it can wait, but I don't know. Can it wait?
It's so fine. I mean, this show's already gone off the rails. Is the trend of exposing your butt to the sun coming back? This recurring TikTok trend, is it happening again, Tim?
I mean, I hope so
Butthole
because I
sunning
want that
back?
to be normalized. That's behavior I want normalized.
Yeah. No, there are a few people doing it. It's being called the TikTok trend. It is not a widespread trend. Not
Oh,
that many people are exposing their junk to the sun.
oh my God, that would have been awesome. Oh well, I mean, I'm already marinating weekend chicken in NyQuil, so I've got that
Yeah,
going for
right.
me.
So
I
you
don't
got
have to
that
expose
one.
my
Yeah,
butt.
yeah. I mean, the folks say there's a bunch of benefits to it. I do not believe them. I will not be doing that. And
I mean,
not the A, because it's getting cold now, B, because I live next to a park, and C, because I don't need a tan there.
I, right. For me, it would be about maximizing my vitamin D production and my lightest skinned area. Like that's successful vitamin D
I
production is in
I,
lighter
I feel
skin.
like you could just take vitamin D. Like
Well,
that's
I
the
do
better
have.
way to do it.
I could do that. That would be easier. I have
Yeah,
several
like
bottles of it.
you can keep your pants on and,
Well then that
and not upset your neighbors, like I'm just saying
I,
we have the technology.
I mean, I'm not sure my neighbors don't like seeing my butt. They haven't actually, complained. I mean, I don't show my butt often in my
Oh,
neighborhood,
there you go.
so something I'll
All
work
right.
on. Take a
So
survey.
anyway, we'll end the show on that note. Just the weirdest news I saw of the week. Again, New York Post article about it. Like the mainstream-ish news was reporting on that, but it's like a handful of people.
Well,
In the same way, but like the handful of people are serious about it, and then a bunch of people were just making fun of it.
I totally think that the kids have finally grasped how to use social media and make fun of us older people. Like, I'm gonna make NyQuil chicken. You watch what
NyQuil
happens. Like,
chicken.
this
Yep.
is gonna be great.
Go
I'm
for it. You
gonna
tell me
tan
how it
my
is.
ass butt in the sun and watch what happens. I'm gonna do it on TikTok. Those old people don't know what to make of this stuff.
Join a trend, it'll go viral. That's what it is.
It's just the kitty litter stuff, man. I'm telling you, the kids are playing you guys. They're messing with you. Ask your kid if that's going to school. Have you seen a litter box anywhere in your school? And honestly, I'm telling you right now, they try not to answer because they don't want to lie. They're just like, yeah, man, that bus driver's really mad about that stuff. Like they change the
Yeah.
subject. It's just like,
That's
that
funny.
was not an answer, young feller.
All right. Well, on that note, folks, thanks again for listening today. We're gonna call it a night. We'll be back next week. Have a wonderful weekend. Good night.
Good night.